Well, hi everybody. I'm Mollie Hansen. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Airstream. How many of you guys are from Ohio? Okay, good. How many of you guys know Airstream's in Ohio?
Oh, no. Okay.
It's actually, our headquarters is about an hour north of here in literally a farming community called Jackson Center. So I've been with the company almost 13 years. I have a long history in apparel and footwear brands prior to that. And I'm just honored to be here today and kind of share our story. I'm going to start out. We're a heritage brand, obviously. We've been around 93-ish years, right? Yeah, 93 years. We're soon to be 100. We're already gearing up for the 100th anniversary. And we are a heritage brand, and we're an icon. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. I often say to myself, just don't mess it up, right? I also like to think that we've come up with some really great ideas only to find out that they've been already done before. When you're 93 years old, there's lots of things that have happened. So as a heritage brand, a lot of people would shy away from their past and try to completely move it into the new world and next generation. What we've done is embrace the past. This is our founder, Wally Byam. And Wally, I'm going to tell you a little bit about his history, and the reason I'm telling you this is not to give you a history lesson about Airstream, but to show that there are things that people have done over time in marketing that still, they still are true today. In fact, he wrote the playbook that a lot of the things that we do today are the same. And that may sound crazy coming from the 20s, but when I explain it, I think you'll start to see the parallels between what he was doing and what we do today in generating content, social channels, and how we communicate about our brands. So Wally grew up in Oregon. He spent a lot of time outdoors. He tended sheep. He went to Stanford. He got a journalism degree, I think in the 20s, but after he got out of school, he went into publishing and writing, worked for a newspaper, and ended up owning about 7 magazines, which is kind of odd when I tell you the rest of the story. He then got married. He married, her name's Marion, and Marion really didn't like to camp. She didn't want to be in a tent, and so he said, well, how can I make this better for you? And he actually started making plans based on his experience out with the sheep, living out of a trailer, so to speak. And he decided, how do I take that platform and get us off the ground and create a place that she and I can camp? And so he did that, and that very quickly turned into building plans. And so he built plans for how to make an Airstream. And we affectionately refer to this as the canned ham. But what he did, because of his publishing background and because he knew, is that he published those plans. And very quickly, people started asking him, commissioning him to make them a trailer. And that created his business. So he used his background in publishing. He knew he needed to get the word out, and that slowly turned it into a business. He started making trailers. And then in the 30s, he started, talking about his brand. The 40s came along, and there was a war, and so aluminum shortage, and so he went to work for an aircraft company. And when you see the transition from the canned ham, we like to call it, into the trailer that you see today, you can see all the influence that working for an airline company, how that influenced his design direction. So he took that fuselage look from an airplane and said, how can I make that into a trailer? And he called it Airstream because it cut through the air. He also started this is his business card. He also started advertising and talking about the brand and getting his friends involved in it. So if you think about word of mouth and social and how people talk, he became an influencer. He also became a brand evangelist, and it was his own brand, and built a brand out of that. He started a manufacturing company in LA, and then from there, a quick story about how he ended up in Ohio. Many years he was in LA, and he came for the World's Fair in Chicago, and wanted a central place of distribution because it was getting too expensive to ship these across the country, and found Jackson Center. There was a bazooka gun factory from the war that was abandoned, and he then said, this is a great community, a loyal community. People don't leave here. The workforce is going to be stable, and created the factory here, which has free tours every day. If you're from Ohio, you can come up and see it for yourself. Anyway, from there, Wally, one of the interesting things Wally knew as a marketer is that he had to show people what this lifestyle was all about. So he started marketing and started trade shows. And so we are the oldest still in existence travel trailer company. So just to show you, you know, there was a lot of companies that popped up during this time, but none of them lasted. And I believe wholeheartedly it was because of his ingenuity on the marketing side and realizing that he had to show people this lifestyle. He did marketing stunts. Before there was marketing stunts, he got a famous bicyclist to pull a trailer. And, you know, he used that as a way, you know, a lot of things that we do today, trying to get people's attention. So that's a famous a photo that he did. And he also did caravans. Now, caravans are just an interesting, and if you come up, we have a small heritage center. You can see some of these trailers firsthand and see what, this is advertising, right? This is people advertising the places they've been. It's bragging rights. It's saying, I've been around the world. I've done all these things. He knew that if he created these events and he invited his friends who owned Airstreams to go on these, and he would send publicists, photographers, National Geographic photographers went along on these rides, much like we talk about content today. We have to document what's going on. We have to show people how to do things. We have to talk about it. He was doing that. He was social media long before there was social media. He was bringing the right people. He was telling the story. And out of all those people on those caravans, he also created a club that still exists today of Airstreamers that come together. So he built a community around the brand. So in a minute, I'm going to show you a video of Around the World Caravan and how that was done. And just think about it in perspective of what we do today, because very little has changed. We use our customers to communicate our message. We are connected to our community. I'm going to a rally in about a month where I'm meeting, you know, hundreds of Airstreamers and talking to them. We listen to our people. We use their information. It's authentic. It's real. It's still happening. That's all the stuff. So the quick little history lesson is, don't be afraid if you have a heritage brand or you have a history. Don't be afraid to look into it and see, is there things there that are still relevant today? They might be different. And you might have to get a different audience and approach them, but some of the fundamentals are still there. So enjoy the video. Thank you.
And if we had one special thing in our favor, as we covered 30,000 miles in 31 countries, it was having our children with us. And unless we had had to chase them through the flower beds, how could we have lain on the ground to see the Taj Mahal through a garden of flowers?
My husband came home from work, and he worked at the Miami Daily News, and said, "Guess what I applied for?" I said, "What?" He said, "I applied to Airstream to be the correspondent for an around-the-world caravan trip." Wow, great.
What an amazing thing to go and do with your family.
Oh, it was like the best thing that ever happened in my life. It was a lot of fun.
I just knew it would be just a marvelous experience.
We had this map on the wall of the whole world. And so he would sort of map out, well, we're going to go to Singapore and then we're going to drive here. But like, that doesn't mean a lot to a kid. It was just like, it was going to be this great journey.
So I remember thinking how cool we're going to go around the world. And then at some point the trailer came into our driveway, and I just remember being so thrilled that we were going to get to go sleep in the trailer, and that was a lot of fun. It was all an adventure. When you're that little, everything's an adventure.
When we pulled out of the driveway, Lori was 9 months old, and Judy was just slightly under 5, and Scott was slightly under 7 years. We were a unit no matter where we were. They were so dependent on each other for companionship, they got along well. I think it's from necessity. I think that helped.
Traveling with a caravan is certainly an easy way to get from here to there.
We used to say we're like the circus that has come to town. To see our trailers coming one by one, we waved. We did a lot of waving, so that felt like we knew what the king and queen must feel like. It was always wave. As we go down the road, we're going to meet people as people, just maybe for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. You don't get their name and address, but you do take pictures because everybody looks different. I learned a lot about the world.
It affected everyone greatly and opened their minds to what the world really is, other cultures, everything having to do with culture, food, dress, seeing the world in a different light.
And this would be everywhere we went: Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Hungary, the Czech Republic. They were all really nice.
There's so many pictures I have in my brain from this trip about strangers hugging my children or holding my children, and then they're gone again, you know. We never knew them, and we won't know them again. It's almost like you're related to everybody, and it certainly doesn't matter what nationality or what religion.
I got this massive exposure to diversity, and I think I had an endless curiosity that continued as I evolved, and I'm more in charge with my life. That kind of naturally evolved. As I've gotten older, I'm more and more grateful, for the trip.
Immensely grateful. It was an adventure of a lifetime. I'm so glad my parents did it. I'd say that the thing that I brought with me into the rest of my life was a respect and care for the people of the world.
Thank you so much, Molly. Thanks so much for sharing that love story with us. And we're here today to talk about engineering brand love. And, a lot of what we saw, it sets our tone for the day, filled with adventure and wide-eyed wonder and thinking about what it means to maintain and invest in a brand today. But there were some black and white photos, and we're talking about a heritage brand. Let's talk about what's happening today in this modern world where we're all kind of looking for relevance in brands. So you talked a lot about Wally Byam and where the spirit of the brand kind of stems from and how the company was created, and you have admiration in your voice, rightfully so, when you talk about Wally. Can you tell us a little bit more about what exists today where you still see remnants of that ethos?
Well, Wally would go on these caravans, and he was there to really be with the people. He was also there to make sure to tell the story. But more importantly, he was there to make sure that the product performed. And so we need to stay connected to our customers. And so today we're very active in the club. You can see the image. The club's still happening today. We give every new owner a membership to the club. So we believe that if you buy our products and you commune with other Airstream owners, you're going to fall in love, and it's going to be a lifestyle that's going to last you forever. You heard the story. I mean, these experiences, what we need to do is tell those stories today. We have a blog. On our blog, we tell a lot of Airstreamers' stories about. I hear it all the time. I took my kids to a resort, and they liked it, and I took them camping, and they'll never forget it. So how do we tell those stories, and how do we use those stories to get the next generation of folks interested in? And I mean, we stay relevant. I'm lucky, right? It's a blessing to work for this brand. It's a truly beloved brand. You know, like I said, I just don't want to mess it up. But it's, you know, from a standpoint of a brand, other brands love us, which is great. I've worked in the industry of highly competitive groups, and where you couldn't really even talk to your competitors. I have no competitors, really. We compete with ourselves and our used market, which is kind of interesting. So it's really about how can I extend the brand? How can I stay in places that are relevant to the next generation? But these stories don't change. They're just different people. They, you know, they have different motivations, but the emotional connection is the same.
Yeah, great. You referenced there in your answer other brands, and you talked about not really having other competitors, but you've also worked for other heritage brands. Can you draw some parallels with, and tell us a little bit more about the other brands you've supported and the parallels you see with other heritage brands?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly enough, I was in the apparel and footwear industry, Nike, Adidas, Columbia, for many, many years. And I thought my trajectory was always going to be in one of those brands in retail. And I was working for Converse in Boston, and this opportunity came up. I was a huge fan of Airstream. I had been working for Columbia Sportswear. They asked me to build a snowboard booth, and my creative friends in Portland said, hey, let's get an Airstream, let's gut it, make it our booth. Fell in love. I was living on a houseboat, and I wanted a land house, and I said, okay, if I'm going to have anything on land, I don't want a mortgage, I want an Airstream. Yeah. So I fell in love with it. I was at Converse, and an employee of mine knew somebody there, and I was like, man, if I ever was going to jump ship in apparel, I was going to go. Now the leap from Converse to Airstream might seem monumental, but if you think about that emotional connection that we're all trying to make with our customers, right? Converse, the Chuck Taylor, is the #1 selling shoe of all time. Billions, right? And if anybody has them on here, you think you're a rebel, you think you're unique, you think that you're different and you're creative and you're a little, you know. That's very similar to the psyche that Airstream owners feel. So I was a little nervous about coming to a completely different brand, but when I realized that, when I realized the Chuck Taylor and an Airstream have something in common, it was a much simpler leap, because I knew I had to get into the hearts and minds of people and have them get that emotion out and tell other people that if you participate in this community, you're going to be something special. So that's what we do.
You talked a lot about investing in keeping customer loyalty, owners, people who already love the brand, and keeping them coming back, helping them serve as ambassadors. But part of the challenge today that we all face as marketers is, how do we turn new heads? How do we bring new audiences into the fold of a brand? So can you talk about some of the innovative things that you do at Airstream today to attract new fans?
I talked a little bit about collaborations. A big part of what I do today is partnerships, and again, we have the luxury of having brands come to us and want to partner with us. I have not met, maybe one, they'll remain nameless, people who didn't want to partner for some reason. And so we have this huge opportunity to get our brand and another brand together and extend our reach into other areas. I can't say those people didn't already know about Airstream, but they weren't thinking about it. So in the Pottery Barn or the REI, Pottery Barn specifically, you know, we have a licensing business. That's to extend the brand. I call them dreamers and streamers. Streamers are people who own. I've got to embrace them and love them the entire ownership process. And dreamers are people who know us and love us and think about it in the future. What do I do with those dreamers? And we have a huge licensing opportunity to build our brand in different areas, sell them a t-shirt, or work with collaborators that will get us into places and have them start thinking about that. We did an American Girl license a few years ago, and that was solely to get little girls in love with Airstream. This is a long road. It's a very expensive product. It takes years. People wait their lifetime. So we have to be incredibly patient as marketers. and we have to talk to them over and over and over again. You buy a tennis shoe, I mean, that's the leap, right? You buy a tennis shoe, you see it, you love it, you want it, it's $40, whatever. $120 thing is a real challenge. And so pandemic, we went from average of 400 days interacting with us on our website down to 0. You go in and buy it. Now we're back to, on average over a year, people play, talk to us. We nurture them. We send them emails. We get them excited. We tell them stories. That's a long time to talk to these people before they make a decision. So it's staying relevant. It's connecting with new brands. We also have a fan base that's always doing creative stuff with our Airstreams. They just don't die, right? They get resurrected. So that's really good.
Speaking of that, people that are always doing new things with your Airstreams, and I was curious about this question. I know many of us have gone on vacations. We're on the road, and we look over and we see a trailer on the road, and there might be bumper stickers, and there's expressions of love, and that's kind of what brand love is all about, and kind of like what human love is all about. Is it gets your heart beating? It's acts of love as well. So I'm curious about what is the wildest super fan thing you've ever seen, because we all know those really into it fans of Airstream are out there. Maybe it's a tattoo. What's the wildest thing you've come across?
Well, I will say people name their Airstream. It's much like a boat. It becomes part of the family. I've heard stories where they keep albums of everywhere the Airstream is gone, and when they sell it, they lovingly give it to the next owner to say, this is where my silver Twinkie's been. I've heard stories of where one really heart-wrenching story was when a man had an Airstream with his wife. His wife passed away. They had kept this book, and he wanted to get back in the Airstream, and he kept seeing this one. And he went to the guy. It was in a storage container, and the guy says, oh, it's not for sale, but you can see it if you want to get in it. He walked in that Airstream, and it was the same one his wife had. And they had the book of the story of the Airstream and all the pictures, and so the guy ended up giving it to this man. So, I have hundreds of stories, but I think the weirdest one. Thank you so much. Did you see that? I was crying up here. I think the strangest one was a fan came from China, and we distribute in China for a while, but it's a very difficult place to be with an Airstream. And he came over. He was a huge fan. He loved Harley Davidson and Airstream, and he wanted to tell us that he had named his son Wally. Oh. So I think that's probably that. When you name your child after a brand, then
I think that wins over a tattoo. I think that beats it by just a little.
Okay.
The last thing we'll ask is just what else did we not cover today? What else do you think is special about the brand and the work you get to do every day? Just anything that we didn't cover in your talk.
I would just remind everybody that stay connected to the people that you're marketing to. Like really listen to them, spend time with them. I encourage my team to talk to owners. It can be very long. And I've been in hundreds of trailers, listened to how they renovated them and what they did. They're our biggest critics, but also our biggest evangelists. And I think if you stay connected to your customer and you keep listening to them and you use their voice to elevate your brand, for us, it's been a huge success.
Did you bring any trailers to sell today to anyone? If so, or give
Just
away.
an hour north. Just an hour north.
Great. Well, let's have a round of applause for Mollie. Mollie, thank you so much. We'll turn it back to Rick.